Hello there, this is Chris Morgan with Mount Airy Technologies. We're going to talk today about how to move to a new investment accounting system in 20% less time than what is typical. In this video, we're going to give you some sample companies who have achieved the type of time savings that we're talking about here. We're going to address the problem that we're actually solving for, talk a little bit about who we are and why we're even qualified to have this conversation with you. And then we're going to talk through the details of an actual investment accounting implementation, talk about the considerations that you need to take into account, as well as the detailed steps for an implementation. Soup to nuts, what does it take to actually get this thing done? And then we're going to talk a little bit about the time saved and where it is ultimately you can find cost and time savings. And then in that context, talk about what your options are. How can you actually affect that type of change as well? This video presentation is directed specifically at investment accounting heads. So whether you're an executive or the head of the department, if you're looking to make a change to investment accounting platforms, or even just thinking about it, this video presentation is for you. It's directed directly to and for you. You may be looking to simply understand what it takes in order to move accounting platforms. What's the process? You may be positioning yourself for better growth or scalability as your business grows and changes over time. You may be looking to simplify your business processes or the technologies that you're leveraging. Or you may be just simply looking for proven ways to simplify your overall technologies and the systems that you're using every day. You may be trying to limit business risk, do things a little bit safer, a little bit different. Or you may be looking for some creative ways to stretch your budget. That might mean that you're trying to decrease your costs and complexity and the risks of technology maintenance that are ongoing and continue to evolve. But ultimately, you're trying to put your mind at ease, that you're not unnecessarily exposing your company to unnecessary risk. But at the same time, we're all dealing with the same challenges and pressures and industry headwinds. Regulation continues to be to take its toll on us, to require specific spend and specific business processes to be compliant. We got ongoing downward pressure on fees. Margins are being squeezed. We're trying to find creative ways to deal with shrinking IT budgets, increased competition. We need to be more productive. We need to be more efficient. And a lot of the generic technology that you see out in the market isn't meant to address financial services, investment management, let alone investment accounting and investment accounting functions. The type of time savings we're talking about here is not fiction. These are real experiences with real investment managers that we base our data off of. I'm going to give you 3 quick examples, just snapshots of companies. In this particular case, we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar asset manager, $85 billion in assets on their investment accounting platform across multiple bases, and they ultimately were able to move to a new fully integrated system within 12 months. Now, that's fast. For those of you who have done this before, these projects can take anywhere from 15 to 24 plus months, depending on the size and the complexity of an organization. We've also done this with insurance companies, insurance asset managers. In this particular case, a $200 billion insurance asset manager for an insurance company, they were able to save 5 months ultimately off of their implementation over what was projected and planned, simply by leveraging some additional expertise and some of the tools and methods that I've laid out in this video. Corbeau Technologies is a boutique consulting company focused on investment accounting system implementations. They did this for 12 years before they were acquired by Deloitte. And one of the key reasons why Deloitte was interested in acquiring the consulting team of Corbeau Technologies was as a direct result of the types of things that we're going to talk here in this video, and certainly leveraging some of the software as well. The problem that we're looking to solve for is that it's entirely too hard, too costly, and too time-consuming to change investment accounting platforms. Too often, companies for decades are tied to a single accounting platform that certainly towards the end of its tenure and end of its life doesn't meet the requirement, doesn't meet what your business needs actually are in order to perform investment accounting to the level that your firm needs and requires. But you know what? There are some challenges in changing out an investment accounting platform. That's why it takes so long to actually move and migrate to a new platform. Your business has changed. It evolves over the course of a couple of decades. Often 15, 20, 25 years, folks have been on a single investment accounting platform. You have manual workarounds as a result of functionality gaps and knowledgeable staff just trying to do the best that they can to function within the world that they've been handed. You've got a lot of system interface work that needs to be done. How do you connect the plumbing between systems, both inbound to your investment accounting platform and outbound as well to the rest of the organization? And then finally, you've got data. And data is a challenge for everybody, but ultimately, you need to make sure that the data coming off of the old platform and the data that's going on to the new platform means the same thing, and often it doesn't. How do we mitigate? How do we shorten the life of the project? And how do we do it in the context of those big challenges? Well, when it comes to dealing with the changes to your business, you don't want to shortchange the time and the effort involved with understanding what that is and what it means for the future. How do you best position yourself for the future? Well, there is no better return on investment than spending time in this area. You should absolutely understand how you can better position yourself for the future and not just be relegated to practices of the past. But across the other three buckets, your manual workarounds, your system interfaces, and dealing with data, those are absolutely areas where you can shorten the life of your project, and you can ultimately relieve yourself not just of the time challenges and the time constraints, but as a result, you'll also see some reduced cost. These challenges are challenges that everyone faces. It's not just you, it's not just your firm. This is every investment accounting implementation that I've been a part of over the last 20 plus years. But with the right approach, tools, and some expert involvement, you can ultimately shorten your implementation. As a result of that, save budget, save spend, limit your complexity, reducing your risk at the same time, and therefore increasing your chances of success. All of that you're doing while you're simplifying and streamlining not just the project, but ultimately your investment accounting operation as well. So who is Mount Airy Technologies, and why are we even qualified to be speaking about shortening the life cycles and simplifying projects around investment accounting systems? My name is Chris Morgan. I'm the founder and CEO of Mount Airy Technologies. I spent my entire career in the investment management industry. The vast majority of that time has been spent actually implementing investment accounting systems for some of the biggest and most revered names in the industry. I started my career as an investment accountant. I did that for a provider of investment accounting software. I then moved over to the development side where I helped them actually develop the product. So I understand the challenges not just of the investment accountant and the business, but I also understand the technology challenges. I've developed software solutions to help speed up investment accounting implementations through the course of my consulting career. And I even founded a company whose sole business was implementing investment accounting systems for clients. Mount Airy Technologies is a company that was founded on the premise of helping investment accounting system implementations. I've used all of my background and my expertise to help solve this challenge. I founded Corbo Technologies to provide consulting services to help companies actually implement investment accounting systems. And while I was there, I invested in some software that helped us do that in a faster, cheaper, better way. After spending 12 years running Corbo Technologies and consulting to investment firms around investment accounting implementations, that consulting team was acquired by Deloitte. They wanted us to help them develop a practice that would address those same challenges. I moved on from Deloitte and continued my journey working for a variety of other fintech and other firms throughout the course of the last several years. But I keep coming back to this same problem. Clients who are trying to implement investment accounting systems continue to repeat the same challenges, the same work, and ultimately deal with the same problems. And we believe that we have answers. Companies are wasting too much time, too much energy redeveloping things that have been done before. They've been recreating the wheel that has been created hundreds, if not thousands of times already. So we're looking to simplify investment accounting system implementations, but this time we're taking a slightly different approach. We're not out there to provide consulting services to our clients. We're trying to provide them with the software that will actually help them get there faster. So you don't have to recreate the wheel, and you don't have to recreate and solve again the challenges of the past. Okay, so let's talk about the steps. What does it actually take to implement a new investment accounting platform? Well, let's take a few minutes to understand investment accounting implementations just from a bigger picture. Often I've found over the course of my career that companies underestimate the scale, scope, and risks associated with an investment accounting implementation. It's far more costly and often takes far more time than you tend to estimate at the outset. These projects typically take 15 to 24 months to complete, if you don't include the RFI and the RFP. That process alone can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months, again, depending on the complexity of your organization. Now, project costs often are several multiples of the cost of the software itself, so be prepared that you might deal with some sticker shock. It is not uncommon, from what I have seen, to see that the cost of the actual implementation itself is 15 times the price of the vendor software itself. And often I've seen it go beyond that. The most successful projects that I've been a part of have leveraged subject matter experts, investment accounting professionals that have done these types of implementations before. They're complex, they're involved, and there's plenty that you can miss. But the thing that's probably most underestimated is the value of being able to tell you what not to do as opposed to describing to you what you should do. So look to leverage some expert help. Finally, in the area, the rarest of exceptions, you never want to do a like-to-like conversion. Don't just take your existing environment today and move it over to the future environment. This is a prime opportunity to make your world better. So you need to take some things into consideration as well as you're working through an investment accounting project. You need to make sure that you've measured the benefits. What is it that you're actually trying to accomplish through through virtue of one of these implementations? Do you have specific goals set? Do you have specific metrics that you must meet in order to consider it a success? Do you know the capabilities and functionality that are required in order for you to be successful in the future? Do you know what the nice-to-haves are versus your true requirements? Do you have an idea for where you're comfortable with delivery of the software? You know, historically, this has been an on-premise world, right, where you take software from the vendor and you install it. But the world has shifted over the last couple of years, and now clients are not just offering hosting, but some are actually offering true SaaS, software as a service models as well. What's the impact to not just your investment accounting and operations groups, but the IT teams, your front office, your client services folks? Do you understand what that impact actually is? Have you considered the change management pieces? People don't like change, and so you need to make sure that the people are on board and you have a plan for actually delivering communications and messages to them so that they can be just a little bit more comfortable. Do you know the state of your existing data? Is it in good shape or bad? Is there a lot of effort that you're going to have to take in order to actually clean up that data? Or is there a different way or better approach? And then finally, you need to make sure you understand the maturity of your existing systems and the infrastructure that you've put into place. Because at a minimum, you need to get to the standard where your investment accounting platform can ultimately be successful. The areas where you're going to find you're taking the most time in any investment accounting system implementation really are around understanding and implementing your requirements, making sure that you've developed the proper tools to migrate data off of the old platform onto the new one, making sure that you've got the right plumbing and interfaces connecting the systems both to the investment accounting platform as well as downstream from the investment accounting platform. You're going to need to make sure you spend plenty of time developing reports, being able to reconcile the data that you've moved from one platform to another, as well as reconciling in an ongoing way in your new investment accounting solution as well. And then you certainly can't underestimate the amount of time and effort that you should spend testing within the new environment to make sure that everything is working properly. So let's take a look at a fairly involved but simple diagram for the steps involved with an investment accounting system implementation. You can see that we've broken this down into 3 primary phases: the planning phase, the execution phase, and what we've framed go live, where you actually have moved to the new platform and then you're performing those functions. We've further broken this down into the business-specific tasks, things that the business would be responsible for, versus those that IT or your technology teams ultimately will need to take care of for you. And then we have elements both of change management and of feedback. Both are critical to a successful implementation. You need to make sure that people understand and are comfortable with why it is you're doing what you're doing, what that means for them, and give them a sense of security for the future. And the best way to do that ultimately is to ask them, solicit feedback, solicit input, and make sure that you're constantly evaluating what it is that you're doing and what that means for the organization as well. Now, we've put together some videos that take you through each of these individual steps, both on the business side as well as the IT side. So if you're interested in getting into the actual details of each of these individual steps, please look for those videos and watch those videos. But in the interest of time and for this specific video, we really want to focus on the areas that we think that we can speed up. In fact, we've proven that we can speed up. In the context of this same diagram, you can see that really we're focused in around those IT tasks, right? So you still have to perform all of the business tasks, and certainly the time is well spent there, as we've talked a little bit about. But the areas where time can be saved are really around development of interfaces, conversion programs, and reconciliations, and then the ongoing support and changes associated with those types of programs. Now, the process of developing any type of program, whether you're talking about conversions or interfaces or reconciliations, really can take a couple of different forms. Historically, most companies used to work in a waterfall method, but today, many are moving or have moved to more of an agile method. Now, in either of these circumstances, either of these methods, you're talking about involvement of at least 2 resources in the development cycle. And that's a business analyst who really understands the business need or drives out the business requirements and maps the fields and related elements, and then hands off all of that work to a developer who then goes through and actually codes for whatever program ultimately they're working on. That handoff is really important and is really key, and if you have any level of dysfunction between those 2 individuals, it can be a bit of a challenge and certainly result in a lot more iterations of the program that you might otherwise want and expect. But these two resources need to work effectively with one another in order to create and develop meaningful and solid programs. When it comes to data conversion to investment accounting systems, let's talk a little bit about data conversion programs. So again, we've talked about the 3 buckets: the conversion programs, the interfaces, and the reconciliations. Data conversion programs, they're absolutely necessary. There is no way to convert from one application, investment accounting application, to another without these programs. The problem is that they're a complete throwaway. So you go through all this time and effort to actually develop programs that take data off of the old system to transform it into something that the new system can actually consume, and then you never use them again. It's time consuming, takes a lot of effort, it's critically important, but you need to understand investment data, you need to understand the proprietary formats of the new investment accounting system that you're dealing with, you need to understand the data components of the legacy platform that you're coming off of, and you need to have a repeatable process. So the programs that you develop, will return the same result time and time again. Now, let's talk through an example just to give this a little bit more context. Let's say that we're dealing with a client who's moving off their legacy platform onto a new one. So more modern, more capable, all of that. The client will determine what resources that they need, and that's the business analyst and the developer that we've talked about. And those two will endeavor to actually create this conversion program. They go out and they start to develop their requirements, and they realize that they actually can't do anything until they find somebody who knows the data within the old system and can actually get that data out for them. They go off and they often find a DBA or a developer that understands the data model of the old system and can cobble something together that's meaningful for them. Once they have that, they go through and they realize that the new investment accounting implementation or a new investment accounting system actually has a proprietary format. Often these are outputs that are XML and that need to be dealt with within an XML format. But at the very minimum, they realize that they need to deal with security master, positions, prices, and often ratings. After several months worth of work, they've iterated through the programs and they're working great, right? They're doing everything and working as expected. Business analysts then will go through and run their tests and make sure that the program is mostly right, particularly for a particular data set that they're working in. And then they have the investment accountants come in, and the investment accountants make sure that the data is as they expected as well. After they've gone through that with one data set, we then go through another set of tests, right? So a different data set. So instead of maybe January 31st, perhaps you move on to February 28th or 29th, and then you move on to March. And again, you prove that you've encountered and dealt with all of the requirements, and you get the results that you expect. You go through, call it 4 data conversions. Everything goes off really, really well. You're able to reconcile the data between the old system and the new system. Data conversion programs, they're deemed a success. You migrate into the new investment accounting world. Everyone is happy. Then you throw everything away. They're not needed anymore. You've had great success. You've developed solid programs. Unfortunately, those programs are never needed again. So while the effort ended up justifying, what it is you meant to accomplish, those programs ultimately are thrown away. In the context of interfaces, it's similar but different, right? Some of the things you need to think about related to interfaces really are about whether or not you're going to decouple from your investment accounting system or not. Oftentimes, legacy platforms have point-to-point interfaces, but over the last decade or so, consulting firms in particular have talked more about a decoupling of systems and more of a hub and spoke model as opposed to point-to-point interfaces. How are you going to do that? Are you going to leverage the standard interfaces of the investment accounting provider? Is it really standard, or is there customization that you actually need in order to get that thing to work? How are you planning to connect? Are you dealing with APIs and file-based transfers, FTP, or other methods, message queues? How is it that you plan to interact with the system? All of these things will factor into your interface development. And then ultimately, how's that going to be supported? And how is it you're going to track the lineage of data flowing across your organization? Do you need to worry about data lineage at all? Some of the key challenges you're going to deal with is that interplay that we talked about. Business analyst to developer. Are they talking? If not, you're going to deal with some problems and some challenges there. How detailed do your requirements need to be, and how free of errors are they? Again, you're dealing with two individuals, one that is developing the requirements and probably understands them really, really well, and then a developer that's relying on that documentation to make sure that they code for it properly. The better that documentation is, the easier it will be ultimately for that developer to work. Oftentimes, too, you have developers that might not understand the investment accounting world or the investment management world. To the extent that you can find resources that do, you will be far better off. You don't want to just have to rely solely on the documentation that business analyst provides when you're dealing with a developer that is totally cold on the domain that we're actually working in. And then ultimately, you've got some differences between developers and how they like to develop. A lot of investment accounting platforms, you'll have a way that you want interfaces developed, and you could have two developers developing in that context, developing in similar ways, but the logic that they're using to actually develop their interfaces will be different. Ultimately, the end product that you're dealing with will need to be supported potentially in a slightly different way between two or more different developers. And then ultimately, again, any changes that you have, you need to deal with that interaction of business analyst and developer as well. These are just some of the core sample interfaces, examples of interfaces that you'll need to develop. For those of you who have done this before, these will not be foreign to you. And certainly if you're running an investment accounting department, these will be interfaces that you're intimately familiar with. Depending on whether or not you're dealing with a shadow book, or you're just a shadow book versus performing the actual accounting for your clients or for your organization, will determine whether or not you need to deal with something like a general ledger interface or not. And let's not forget about ongoing support and maintenance of these products, of these programs. They need to be maintained, bugs need to be fixed, enhancements need to be made. The challenge there is making sure that you got budget to do that, right? We're dealing with increasingly shrinking IT budgets across investment management with a few rare exceptions. You need to have ways of monitoring changes. Are you keeping track of the proprietary schemas of the investment accounting providers? Do you have a need to track what SWIFT is doing or other standards like your fixed standards, how those are evolving and changing over time, and then ultimately adjusting for those changes in your existing programs and interfaces. Ultimately, all this requires IT development resources. You need to make sure that they're available, that your priorities are laid out, and ultimately that you can deliver on the changes to support the business in a way that is timely for them and meets not just the regulatory challenges associated, but also the business challenges of the business organizations as well. What are your options? How can you do this? Certainly there are many different ways that you can achieve the types of time savings that we're talking about. Hopefully, these areas that we've highlighted and some of the detailed steps of the investment accounting system implementation that we've detailed in other related videos will help you. But these are the things that you need to do, right? You need to look ultimately, regardless of choice, in order to realize the time savings that we're talking about, you need to adopt an iterative approach for software development. And that's either agile or an agile-like methodology. Oftentimes, you're going to find that you're going to need a hybrid between a waterfall and an agile methodology. You need to make sure that your teams are trained on the proprietary formats of your new investment accounting system. There isn't an accounting system that I've run into that doesn't have some variation of proprietary layout that they require in order to take data into their system. You need to make sure that you're making investment of time and resources to make sure that you've built a truly standard and reusable set of programs for your conversion programs, interfaces, and reconciliations. The last thing you really want to do is build one-off programs or one-off interfaces where you cannot leverage them for other purposes. You need to make sure that you've identified server hardware. You're putting this in the cloud, this thing local. How is that being taken care of? Making sure that you've increased your IT support budget so that you can deal with the support and maintenance associated with those programs. You need to make sure that you've got the ability to monitor those organizations and those standards, whether it's SWIFT or FIX or your investment accounting provider. You need to have mechanisms in place for people to report problems to you, particularly production-based problems. And then you need to make sure that you've got folks that are effectively available, sometimes at a moment's notice, to fix bugs, particularly if they're critical and production-related. Those steps put in place ultimately could provide you with a shortened investment accounting project and project life cycle, but they also come with higher IT support costs and development costs. It requires a larger IT footprint just by the nature of being able to support those programs. There's potentially some increased business risk as you take on more activities that aren't really core to your business purpose. And then when it comes to things like conversion programs and some of the core reconciliations that you need to do to cut over to the new system, there's some throwaway work that that ultimately takes place. There is another option, and that is the option that Mount Airy Technologies has developed in our Emissary product. Now, Emissary was built to be a standard program that runs across reconciliation and data conversion and interfaces and integrations with other platforms. What we've effectively developed is a platform that doesn't require an IT developer to actually create these programs. We've simplified this, and we've put a tool in the hands of a business analyst where they will perform all of the tasks necessary in order to actually develop interfaces or data conversion programs or reconciliations, all without the need for that IT developer. This simplifies things, for the development of those programs, and certainly cuts the time, as we've shown. Again, this presentation, this video is meant for investment accounting executives who are looking to position their companies for the future. They're looking to simplify the way that they do business within the investment accounting function. They're looking to reduce their risks. They're looking to find new ways of leveraging their technology and stretching their budget. They may be dealing with costs that they're being forced to reduce. And ultimately, they need to get to a place where they're comfortable that they're not exposing their company to unnecessary risks. Some of the benefits of using Emissary are just that. You don't need to spend as much on IT as we're taking care of that for you. You have the ability to focus on your core business, and you don't have need teams that understand the proprietary layouts of all the various systems and applications in the investment accounting system that you've purchased. You don't need developers to code these interfaces. We are agile by definition in the iterative way that a business analyst would use Emissary. We have standardized interfaces that help you develop those conversion programs, those reconciliations. It's all on a standard single platform in a single code base. You have the ability to have a centralized and evergreen view of what your interfaces actually are, what the data mappings are, and ultimately you have transparency into how your data is flowing across the organization. Most important, you're isolated from changes that your investment accounting software vendor might make to those platforms and to those layouts. We handle those for you. And then finally, some of the features and benefits. We have built-in support of the proprietary layouts of most of the investment accounting systems out there. It just comes built in with the software. You only need to know what data needs to map from old to new or existing system to new system. We don't care about the version of software that you're running on. If you ever upgrade or your vendor upgrades to a new software version, we don't need to worry about changing the Emissary software at all. We have the ability to deal with natural language processing. We simplify things for building rules and filters, and you have the ability, your business analysts have the ability to deal with some fairly extensive and complex logic, whether it's Boolean logic or other mechanisms that are necessary. We support complex data transformations. It's point and click to map your fields. There is no need for understanding of programming languages or syntax. And then we even provide evergreen data lineage. So at a company, source, and interface levels, we track all of the fields and the data flows across those interfaces, and we can provide it to you in a view where you can see it in a single screen. You have the ability to filter inbound or outbound, as well as leveraging some machine learning in order to actually help you develop those mapping transformations and interfaces, reconciliations and the like for you. It's very simple. You can go the very difficult route, or you can go the more simple route. We've already taken care of a lot of the heavy lifting. We can help simplify and streamline your investment accounting implementation. It will save you months of time ultimately by leveraging the technologies that we have built.